there are 7 deadly wastes associated with companies and their business processes. And so in this section, we're going to talk to you about what waste looks like and how to identify it. Those 7 wastes are the waste of inventory, waste of correction, waste of transportation, waste of overprocessing, waste of waiting, waste of motion, all leading to the waste of a person. You know, lean was derived from the manufacturing environment, but we can also apply this to our environment in healthcare because the critical needs of our patients need to be met, and we need to identify those areas where there's red tape or where there's noise going on and try to minimize that so we can focus on our goals. So the waste of inventory. The first deadly waste is the waste of inventory, which is a waste of resources when they're consumed in advance of when they are required by the next customer in the process. So this is an example of a warehouse where there's lots of inventory. We don't necessarily deal with lots of inventory here at Harden, but if you think about it, say you order 18 boxes of paper, and those 18 boxes of paper are sitting around by the copy machine, and you use 1 box a month. So 17 boxes of paper are sitting around collecting dust when we could be investing that money somewhere else, maybe hire somebody else to deliver patient care, invest it somewhere else, get some return on it. That's an idea of how lean can affect you and your environment. Next deadly waste is the waste of correction, which is the waste that occurs when a product does not conform to the proper specifications. This could involve product rework or scrap. So in a typical manufacturing environment, you know, that happens. But this can be applied to our environment as well. Do we always do things right, correctly the first time? Who in here is perfect, other than Stephen? Right? Yeah. So can anybody think of, you know, an example of a waste of correction or something that wastes our time, makes us go back, have to redo it? Yes?
Improper orientation of new employees, which you continually have to go back.
So orienting new employees. Okay, that's a good point. If we were to cut out some of the waste in that process, maybe we wouldn't have to go back and go back and go back, to your point. Another example of a waste of correction is, what about Medicare and Medicaid? Do we always bill them correctly the first time? Do we ever get denials or rejections from them? Do we ever have to go back and do some research and find out what happened and then resubmit the bill and then hope we get paid that next time? So that's an example of a waste of correction in our environment. The waste of transportation, which is waste caused by unnecessary movement of material or product. So in a manufacturing setting, you know, say I create the newest, best product, and that product gets bought by Walmart, and let's just call it the never-ending battery. So Walmart buys my never-ending battery. They ship it from my manufacturing center to their distribution center that then gets shipped out throughout the country, and then it sits on their shelves until they get a forklift, put it out onto the store floor, and you see where I'm going with that. So during that whole time, this product, my never-ending battery, is not being sold. So there's a waste of transportation associated with that. Can anybody think of an example of what that might look like in our environment? Inefficient routing of our staff, so out in the field when they're going from client to client or home to home. Tony?
One of the lean events that occurred that I didn't participate in, but I heard of, was at one of the nursing facilities, they followed a CNA around.
Okay, great.
For the whole day, and mapped every single step that CNA took. And what they found is when they did a graph of her footsteps, it was just like a bowl of spaghetti. And she was just going in circles.
Wow.
And they found that if they placed equipment in different places in the facility, it would reduce the amount of wasted steps that person took and increase the amount of time they had to spend with the patient.
So that's an excellent example. So they followed a CNA around in one of the facilities and saw that there was maybe some opportunity there to reduce her transportation. It's also going to tie into another waste that we talk about later on, which is the waste of motion, which means if she had all of the things she needed around her there by the patient, then maybe she wouldn't have had to do all this walking around. So that's an excellent example. Thank you, Tony. So the next deadly waste is the waste of overprocessing, which is a waste of unnecessary processes and operations. So do we ever have anything like that here? Do we always do things correctly, other than Stephen the first time? Do we have any issues with that? So in my role as the audit director, my other role, I sometimes look at disbursements that go out our door, make sure we have proper approvals. One of these disbursements I was looking at had 5 signatures on it. 5 signatures. It was for less than $100. So I would have been happy with 1, but 5 signatures. So, Lean asked us why, is that, there's probably a very good reason for it, but is that necessary? Is there a better way? Is that the best use of our time? The next deadly waste is the waste of waiting, which is the waste caused by not having any of the materials, supplies, or information available exactly when needed for the worker to do their value-added job without interruption. So do we ever wait for anything here at Harden? Are we ever waiting for anything to happen before we can do our job? So the technology example is always a good one. Do we have any non-technology examples? I believe Lou fell on his sword on that one, right? Do we have any non-technology examples?
Well, like
yes.
accounting, say, is waiting for payroll to finish so they can post payroll, or they're waiting for the revenue cycles to end so we can post net revenue so we can get our stuff closed.
Oh, that's excellent.
Big piece of early in the month where we're waiting for things, waiting for the bank statements, waiting for
Right. That's an excellent example. We're waiting for payroll to close, we're waiting for revenue to close before accounting could go and finish their close process to get their numbers out to our investors and banks who look at them on a monthly basis. So that's a great example. What about in healthcare when you go to your doctor? When you show up to your doctor at the appropriate time that you're scheduled for, does anybody ever get to see the doctor right on time? Do you ever have to wait? They have a whole room dedicated to this. It's called the waiting room. So you go there, you show up on time, you may fill out some paperwork, a questionnaire, and then you sit down and you wait. And you wait. And the whole thing with that whole process of getting to the doctor, signing in, all of that, that's wasting your time. The only value add associated with that process is actually interacting with the doctor. So the next waste is the waste of motion, which is waste caused by non-value added movement of workers or production machines, but we can apply that to the healthcare environment. For example, the CNA workflow, where they followed the CNA around and saw what their motions looked like. That was a great example. What about for us office workers? Have you ever looked for a file on your computer and you found it the first time, and say it was a file that maybe you hadn't touched for months, but all of a sudden your boss calls you up and now it's the most critical thing. You have to find this file. So you may open up something in your documents. You may do a quick search on your computer. You may have several windows up. You may be in a different portal looking for things. Not to give any trouble to our IT folks, but that's an example of a waste of motion of an office worker. I'm guilty of this, you may even mine your database of email and do searches in there because, all kinds of good stuff you can find in there. So I'm guilty of that waste of motion. So all of this leads to the waste of a person, which is the waste caused when a person performs any of the other 7 wastes, thereby not being able to apply their knowledge and skills full-time to the task of adding value. So we've hired this person for her skills and knowledge. We're underutilizing her. We've held her up with all this waste, and now we risk losing her because of our inefficient processes. So we may end up losing her, and that is an example of the waste of a person. Now this chart depicts how that might translate into business improvement. So it's a little clunky, but the typical environment or a typical company has lots of waste in their process and their lead times. The blue section is the value-added part of that process, and then the yellow section is the waste. So typical company has got waste in their process. Traditional operational improvement projects focus on fixing the whole process, but doesn't focus enough on the waste. So where you get major improvement is through the lean process, when it specifically focuses on waste, reducing that waste so that the value-added activities are maximized and waste is minimized. So the outcome is a future state, one best way done by everyone until a better way is found. So that's your new process, until you find a new way to do it. So after a couple of weeks and you've got your new process down, and then you find something else that can improve the process, well, then incorporate that in your process, make sure that you educate people, let everyone know about it, and then move on from there. So you're not looking for a perfect utopia or, you know, the perfect state. You're just looking for one best way done by everyone until a better way is found.